I've always wondered how different things might have been if that one morning had gone the way it was supposed to. It smelled like butter and vanilla. My dad stood at the stove, humming some old tune, flipping pancakes shaped like pandas. He wore a sky blue apron with the word king printed across the front in worn out gold lettering. I was 8. Still young enough to believe mornings could stay soft forever. "Come here, buddy," he said, grinning and spinning a spatula like a magician's wand. I laughed. I was halfway across the room when I heard the spatula clatter to the floor. The next part plays on a loop in my head, like an old film reel someone forgot to rewind. His knees gave way. One hand clutched his chest. The sound of the chair falling. My mom, or Mark, I should say now, screaming. My own voice, barely human. Then the silence that never really left. He didn't make it. Heart attack. They said it was sudden. I still think it was cruel. After the funeral, Mark cried for days, curled up in the bed they shared, clutching one of Dad's old flannel shirts. I used to sit in the doorway and wonder how someone could look so broken, but Mark did get over it, or at least he moved on. A year later, I walked in after school and saw someone sitting in Dad's chair. It was Helen. Kind face, silver-streaked hair, ex-teacher turned financial consultant. They met at a grief support group. She talked softly, smiled like she meant it. Mark introduced her like she was a new piece of furniture. "Liam, this is Helen." They married a few months later. I wore a pressed shirt and shoes that pinched at the toes. I stood at the back of the reception hall, watching them exchange vows like I was watching a play I hadn't auditioned for. Nobody asked how I felt. For a while, I thought things might settle. Helen didn't try to replace my dad. She just existed, quietly, carefully, in the spaces he used to fill. She brought books and warm tea and asked me about school without making it feel like an interrogation. I didn't love her, but I didn't mind her being there. Then Mark told me he and Helen were having a baby. "You're going to be a big brother, Liam," he said one morning while frying eggs. I looked at the pan. I didn't say anything. I just nodded. They named him Daniel. He came into the world during a snowstorm. Nurses beamed. Mark cried. Helen looked exhausted and proud, like she'd climbed a mountain in bare feet. I stood in the hospital room and waited for someone to notice I was there. No one did. After Daniel was born, things changed in a way that didn't scream at first, it whispered. Subtle, then sudden. "Don't slam the door, Liam. The baby's sleeping. You can grab your own breakfast, right? Mark and I were up all night. Be quiet. Daniel can hear you." I got quieter. I got used to cereal that had gone stale, to brushing my teeth alone, to walking to school in the cold without anyone reminding me to zip my coat. No one meant to forget me, not at first. But that's how forgetting works. It starts with missed breakfasts and ends with a silence that grows teeth. Helen tried. In her own way, she signed me up for art classes, took me to karate, watched every practice. She said, "You need something that's just for you." That mattered more than I let her know. But it didn't fix things. Daniel grew up like a prince in a castle no one told him was built on someone else's bones. By the time I was 13, Mark quit his job to focus on the family, which meant Daniel. Which meant I learned to wash dishes, fold laundry, wipe down counters, and tuck my feelings into corners where no one could see them. Once, I asked if we could spend a day, just me and Mark. He smiled but didn't look away from Daniel's crib. "Daniel needs me more right now, Liam." Right. Of course he did. That was the first time I realized something I wouldn't be able to say out loud for years. I wasn't part of the plan anymore. I was just still there. There wasn't a single moment where I realized I was fading. It happened like dusk, slow, creeping, quiet. One minute you're in the light, and the next you're in shadow. By 14, I had learned that asking for attention was pointless. I woke myself up, packed my own lunch, walked to school, walked home, did my homework in the kitchen with a bowl of whatever leftovers hadn't been claimed. Mark would pass me on the way to Daniel's room, not even noticing I was still at the table. Daniel never cleaned up after himself, and somehow that became my job. "Liam, can you pick up the Legos in his room? My back's acting up. Just fold his clothes, will you? He's napping." It started like that, then it never stopped. I don't even know when I stopped pushing back. Maybe the day I saw Mark smile at Daniel with this deep, wholehearted warmth I hadn't seen since Dad died, and realized it had never been meant for me. Helen was the only one who noticed the shift. She tried. She really did. When Mark forgot to make breakfast, I'd find a sandwich quietly waiting for me by the toaster, one of those quiet kindnesses that doesn't ask for thanks. She came to my art shows, took pictures, She was the first person who told me I was good. Not just polite parent praise, she meant it. But she couldn't undo Mark. She couldn't make him care. And Daniel? He didn't have to be mean. He just existed loudly, carelessly, as if the world belonged to him, and maybe, in that house, it did. At 16, I graduated with honors. I stood on a small stage, holding my diploma like it might vanish if I blinked too hard. Helen clapped from the front row, tears in her eyes. Mark was there too. But he wasn't looking at me. I knew what he was thinking. He was wondering if Daniel had eaten, if Daniel would make it to college, if I could just wait a bit on my own plans. He didn't say congratulations. He said, "We need to talk about money." The conversation happened over cold tea and an unopened envelope labeled scholarship info. Mark didn't touch the envelope, just sat there, slowly turning the cup in his hand like it might reveal answers. "Have you thought about waiting on college?" he asked. "Not are you excited? Not what will you study? Not I'm proud of you. Just that. Daniel might need that money later," he continued, voice calm, like this wasn't a betrayal. "He's not as strong as you. He's still finding himself." I found myself while making my own breakfast, I said, quietly. Flat, Mark didn't flinch. "You're independent. You'll figure it out." I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I nodded. That's how it always was. Numbness over noise. Obedience over chaos. Later that night, Helen pulled me aside. She had this look, like she wanted to say something but didn't know if it would land. "That money was meant for you," she whispered. I told him that. "It's yours." It was the first time she referred to Mark as him, not your father. I didn't say thank you. I just nodded again. I left 2 months later. A one-way bus ticket to Bristol State. 2 part-time jobs waiting for me on campus. A dorm room with a window view of nothing in particular. But it was mine. I worked. I studied. I barely slept. And still, I felt freer than I'd ever felt under that roof. I didn't go home for Christmas. Didn't go back for Daniel's birthday. Didn't answer Mark's calls. Most were just voicemails anyway, full of polite guilt. Then the messages changed. "Daniel's having trouble in school. He's lost. He needs your guidance. He won't listen to me. But maybe he'll listen to his big brother." I almost laughed. Big brother. As if that role hadn't been stripped from me before Daniel even learned to crawl. The next summer, I went back. Not because I missed them, but because Helen had called. "Just visit. It's worse than you think." She was right. The yard was overgrown. The mailbox leaned to one side. Daniel hadn't lifted a finger. He was 20 at that point. Still living at home. Still gaming at all hours. Still blaming burnout and creative blocks for not having a job. Mark was thinner, tired, hollowed out. At dinner, I said nothing. Just listened to Mark talk about how Daniel's a late bloomer. Helen finally broke. She slammed her fork down. "He's not blooming, he's rotting." Nobody spoke after that. Peter had died from a sudden heart attack. The only adult who ever saw me, gone, just like that. And with him went the house's last shred of structure. One night, Mark sat me down at the same kitchen table where I'd once waited for help with math homework that never came. He had papers in hand. Bills. Debt. "Please. I need your help, Liam. Just until Daniel gets on his feet." I looked him in the eyes. No. Just that. One word. He didn't fight me. He just deflated. I left the next morning. From that point on, I only heard from them when they needed money. And like an idiot, I gave it. $1,500 a month. Automatic. Quiet. I didn't even think about what I could have done with that money. I just kept paying. Like I owed them something. I didn't, but guilt has a long shelf life. It had been over a year since I started sending the money. $1,500 every month, like clockwork. No thanks. No updates. Just the steady drain of something that wasn't mine to give. I didn't visit. Not for holidays, not for birthdays. Not even when Mark messaged me that Daniel had started a new project that was really promising. I didn't care. I stopped pretending I did. But one Sunday, something pulled me back. Guilt? Habit? A voice in my head whispering, "You're still the older brother, even if no one ever said the words." I showed up unannounced. The house looked like it had aged a decade. Trash on the porch. Lawn half dead. Curtains stained with what I didn't want to guess. Inside, the smell hit first. Old food and unwashed blankets. Daniel was on the couch, controller in hand, eyes locked on a screen. He didn't even glance at me. "Where's Mark?" I asked. He shrugged. Upstairs. That was it. That was all the acknowledgement I got. I found Mark in his bedroom, hunched over a pile of papers. His hair was thinner, his face paler, his presence somehow smaller. He looked up like I was a ghost he wasn't ready to see. I didn't expect you, he said. Clearly, he didn't ask why I came. He just motioned to the papers and said, I was going to call you. That's when I saw it. A document near the top, thick, official looking. Legal font. Title bold at the center. Last will and testament. I froze. My name caught my throat. Mark noticed my stare and moved to cover it. I was faster. I pulled the will toward me, scanned it, line after line. Property, assets, the house, the savings. All of it. Going to Daniel. I flipped through every page like maybe there had been a mistake. Like maybe I missed the line that said to my eldest son Liam. It wasn't there. Not once. When I looked up, my voice was cold. Care to explain this? Mark didn't answer right away. Just rubbed his temple, like he was nursing a headache life had graciously gifted him. Daniel needs security, he said at last. You don't. You've made a life for yourself. You mean the one I built while you watched me wash his dishes? He ignored the jab. You've always been strong, Liam. Independent. You'll be fine. I laughed, a sound so empty it echoed. You think strength is a reason to erase someone? You don't need anything from me. That's not the point. I was shaking now. Quiet rage, not the kind that shouts, but the kind that makes your bones feel like glass. Say it, I said. Have you ever actually loved me the way you love him? He didn't look away. And somehow, that was worse. His eyes met mine, dry, honest, terrifying. Not the same way, no. A beat. You were always different. Daniel needed me more. You mean he was easier to love? Don't twist my words. I'm not. You're saying them just fine, he exhaled. You always had your own way. You didn't need anyone. That's a lie. I needed you. He flinched, but said nothing. I stared at him, waiting, not for an apology. Not anymore. I just wanted the truth to hurt him the way it had lived inside me for years. And then he said, the one sentence that would haunt me longer than I'd admit, Daniel was a better son. I didn't throw anything. I didn't scream. I just stood up, walked out, past Daniel still glued to his screen, past the kitchen that hadn't fed me in years, past the door that never opened for me when I needed it most. I got in my car, and my hands gripped the wheel so hard I couldn't feel them. My phone buzzed on the seat beside me. A reminder, transfer scheduled, $1,500 stow Mark Langford. The first opened my banking app. Canceled it. That was it. I didn't send a message, didn't explain, didn't owe them anything. 3 days later, the messages started. Mark, hey, the money didn't come through. System error? Mark, just checking if something's wrong on your end. Can you resend it? Daniel, bro, mom needs that money. You can't just stop. Daniel, she's crying. This is low, even for you. Mark, you think you're better than us now? I didn't reply. I didn't block them. Not yet. I wanted to see it, the unraveling. I needed to know that silence could sting worse than anything I ever said. Then came the real blow. Daniel, you owe her. She raised you. I stared at that line for a long time. She raised me? No. She raised him. I raised me. And that was the difference. Silence would have been better. But instead, they made noise. First, it was missed calls. 28 of them in 2 days. Then came the texts. All shapes and sizes, concern, guilt, desperation, rage. Mark, I'm struggling. Do you really not care? Daniel, we're going to lose the house. This is on you. Mark, your brother hasn't eaten in 2 days. I wanted to reply, he's 26. Uber Eats still exists. But I didn't. Then they changed their approach. They tried guilt. Mark posted on Facebook. A blurry picture of the house captioned, everything is falling apart. Sometimes the ones you raise are the ones who abandon you. No name mentioned, but I didn't need one. The comment said, enough. Family, friends, neighbors, some of Helen's old church people. So sorry, Mark. Kids these days just don't have the same values. I remember Liam quiet but cold. Selfish, maybe. Some people forget where they came from. I read every single comment, every misunderstanding, every lie that sounded enough like truth to hurt. And then, like clockwork, they found new ways to contact me. DMs, LinkedIn, even a letter, an actual handwritten letter that showed up in my office mailbox. Mark, you'll regret this when I'm gone. Classic. I threw it out. Along with the grocery store flyer, it came wrapped in. Funny how desperation gets creative when people need something. 3 weeks later, Daniel texted me from a number I didn't recognize. Daniel, 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. Curious, I answered. His voice was different, sharper, bitter like he hadn't slept. You can't do this to her. To her, I said. You mean the man who forgot I existed until his ATM dried up? You know what I mean. I know exactly what you mean. You're upset your free ride finally crashed. She's our parent. She's your parent. You're unbelievable. No, I'm free. Daniel scoffed. You're selfish. I waited. Let the silence make him uncomfortable. Then I said it, slow and simple. I paid your way for over a year. Never asked for anything back. And in return, I got erased from our family's history. She loves you, in her own way. She loved the idea of me, someone to pick up your pieces and pretend it wasn't heavy. He didn't answer. So I said one last thing. If you want a future, Daniel, start earning one. You're not a kid anymore. Neither am I. And I hung up. That should have been the end. But endings in families like mine rarely arrive neatly. One day, Uncle Greg called me. He never called. Always texted jokes, memes, short notes. But this time, it was a voice. Liam, he said, they're selling everything. What do you mean? I mean everything. Helen's car, the furniture, your dad's tools. Gone. Pawned or posted. The truck Dad loved? Sold. The watch he wore every day since he was 22? Gone. I swallowed something tight in my throat. For what? To keep Daniel comfortable, I think. Mar can't work. Daniel won't. They're falling apart. I thanked Greg, hung up, sat in silence. I thought I'd feel vindicated, but I didn't. I felt nothing. Or maybe that was peace. The kind that only shows up after you've burned the last bridge and don't miss the smoke. For the next year, I didn't hear from them. Not a word, not a text, not a birthday message, not even a passive-aggressive Facebook post. I thought they might have finally understood. And then, on a Tuesday night, as I was vacuuming my living room, my phone rang. Unfamiliar number. I let it go to voicemail. But something tugged at me, and I played it back. It was Mark. His voice, smaller, older, more brittle than I remembered. I'm sorry. 2 words. That was all it took to bring the past slamming into the room like a storm. Then he continued, I shouldn't have treated you that way. I was wrong. I lost you. And I think I lost Daniel, too. I froze. I replayed it. I miss you, he said at the end. If you ever want to talk, the door's open. I stared at the phone. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just stood there, in the middle of my own apartment, a place that smelled like eucalyptus and fresh laundry, and asked myself the one question no one else had ever asked me. Do I want to go back? I didn't answer Mark's voicemail right away. I let it sit in my phone for 3 days, like a wound I was afraid to touch. I listened to it again, not because I didn't remember the words, but because I didn't trust myself to believe them the first time. I'm sorry. I was wrong. I miss you. I'd waited most of my life to hear those words. And now that I had them, I didn't know what to do with them. They didn't come with money, promises, or explanations. They just came. And maybe that's why I finally replied. I drove back to the house I hadn't seen in almost 2 years. It wasn't the same place. The porch was cleaner. The weeds had been pulled from the walkway. There were flowers again, simple ones, marigolds. Someone had tried. When I knocked, I expected hesitation, awkwardness, maybe even anger disguised as warmth. But the door opened quickly. Mark stood there, and for a second, I barely recognized him. He looked tired, honest, human. Lines etched across his face. His hair fully gray now. But his eyes, they were clear. Liam, he said. Just my name, nothing more. He stepped aside. Come in. The house still had echoes, the kind that don't belong to sound but to memory. I walked past the living room and caught my breath. Daniel was there. He stood up when he saw me. No controller, no screen, no smug tilt to his chin. Just Daniel, older, smaller, maybe real, for once. Hey, he said. Hey, I replied. We didn't hug. We didn't pretend. We just sat, me on the edge of the couch, him across in Dad's old recliner. I have a job now, he said after a long pause. Accounting assistant. Small firm. It's not much, but I'm glad, I said. And I meant it. I pay half the bills, he added, sometimes more. I looked at Mark. He was watching Daniel like he was afraid the boy might vanish if he blinked too long. I told him he had to learn, Mark said quietly. And I told him why. Daniel didn't flinch. He just nodded. I was pissed when you cut us off, he admitted. Felt abandoned. But after a few months, I got it. You didn't abandon us. You escaped. I exhaled. Maybe for the first time in years. Why now? I asked. Why reach out? Mark sat down at the kitchen table. The same table where he once told me Daniel deserved college more than I did. I had a dream, he said, rubbing his hands together. You were sitting here, not angry, just gone, like you'd never existed. I woke up, and I couldn't breathe. That's what it felt like for me, I said, for years. He nodded. I know. Another pause. I'm not here to erase the past, he said. I want to stop running from it. I didn't have an answer for that, but I didn't walk away. We sat in the backyard that evening, the same yard where I once learned to ride a bike and later shoveled snow alone because Daniel had the flu. Again, the grass was patchy, the fence still broken in one corner, but someone had planted vegetables, a tiny, struggling garden along the edge. Those yours? I asked. Daniel nodded. Helps keep me off screens. I almost smiled. Almost. Mark handed me a glass of lemonade. No fanfare, no speech. Just a glass. I sold the watch, he said, not looking at me. I know, I said, Uncle Greg told me. I kept the note Dad left in the box. It's in my desk. I didn't pawn that part. That mattered more than I expected it to. Eventually, Daniel went inside. Mark stayed. We didn't talk about money. We didn't talk about the will. We didn't talk about the years where my name was barely spoken, except as a source of chores or quiet income. We just listened to the wind shift the leaves and the creak of the porch swing. Then he said it. I should have raised you both. Instead, I protected one and left the other to fend for himself. I looked at him, but he didn't look away this time. And you still became the better man, he added. I didn't feel proud. I felt tired. But I also felt seen. And that was enough. Before I left, Mark hugged me. For the first time since my dad died, I don't expect anything from you, he said into my shoulder. I just wanted the chance to say I was wrong. I nodded. That's all I needed. Daniel walked me to the car, said nothing at first. Then, just before I opened the door, he cleared his throat. I used to hate you for being better than me, he said. Now I'm just trying to be like you. I didn't know what to say to that. So I just said, good, try harder, he laughed. Not bitter, surprised. Thanks for coming back, he added. I didn't come back, I said, opening the door. I came forward, and I drove off. The house got smaller in the rearview mirror, but this time, it didn't disappear in anger. It disappeared in peace. Not everything had been fixed. Not everything would. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't chasing love. I wasn't proving my worth. I was just living. And sometimes, that's the quietest kind of revenge there is.